Forget Hades 2 for a second, and while you're at it, go ahead and forget about Megabonk. We're well into 2026, and looking back, 2025 gave us so many action roguelikes that no one's talking about. I'm going to take you through my favorites from each month of 2025 and show you all the games that you probably missed. Some of these might be your next obsession, and others, let's just say, be glad you didn't spend any money on these. Speaking of the latter, Hyperlight Breaker released into early access in January, and it was supposed to hit 1.0 in January of this year, but the current status of that is unknown. Development has stopped, and the developer Heart Machine confirmed that the January content update will not happen. As a refresher, Hyperlight Breaker is a third-person action roguelike with the ability to extract from each run. That isn't really how the game started off, though, which is why it released with terrible review scores on Steam. Initially, the game was more of an extraction game than a roguelike, with a terrible timer-based difficulty, Fortnite-style zone storms, and a horrible progression that required you to farm little seeds just to make a health pack. The game got sweeping changes overall to make it into something that's actually kinda decent to play, borderline fun if I want to be honest. However, with its cancellation, the game may never see an ending or a refined roguelite loop. On the flip side, I showcased Cryptical Path, which released in January as well. This is what I would call a true hidden gem, and many of my Twitch viewers were really surprised at how good this game looked. Basically, it's an action roguelite where you have to lay down the different rooms of a dungeon. You put down the one you want to start and make a path all the way towards the boss. Rooms have a cost to put down, and if you overspend, you'll get cursed in various ways. The actual combat has you fighting enemies as a 2D side-scroller, similar to a Dead Cells, except you build your character by augmenting this dice. The dice is your basic attack, it's your spells, it does basically everything, and it looks pretty cool once you get some good synergies going. I would say that the combat itself is probably the weakest part of the game, but I was really impressed at how everything came together with the dungeon building and finding relics. February brought us Warriors Abyss. I'm actually a huge fan of this Dynasty Warriors roguelike. Dynasty Warriors has always been about fighting hordes of soldiers, so they did basically the same thing here. It might look like a Vampire Survivors clone, but I would say this is literally like the PlayStation 2 Warriors series, with one major twist. You have to recruit warriors from the franchises and summon them at the end of each of your combos. Each warrior, and there's a lot, like 100 different playable characters. Each warrior has their own synergies with each other, elemental bonuses, weapon passives, and a bunch of other stuff to make a refined build. Again, this team made some mistakes on the initial release which held it back, but after a year's worth of balancing and content updates, the game is actually in the best spot it probably could be. The only issue I'm having with it is that the bosses, so far, are the same in each run, so if you hate looking at the same areas and the same enemies over and over, you might struggle here a little bit. But otherwise, I actually do like playing this game. We're now entering March, and the developer of Bone Razor Minions made their own horde survival game. Again, this is not Vampire Survivors, but more like a Brotato. Here, you power up your character with different elemental boosts, weapons, and active abilities. But the real kicker here is that you're actually juicing up the enemies, making them stronger and more rewarding. This dev loves the idea of risk and reward, but instead of nerfing yourself like you do in Brotato, you instead giga buff the monsters until you can't take it anymore. I haven't put a lot of hours into Void's Vigil, but I can see how the game is currently sitting at a 94% positive on Steam. Then we have Nubby's Number Factory. At some point, maybe thanks to Balatro, a ton of build the perfect big number pumping simulator games, say that 5 times fast, start popping up. Nubby's held a spot for a long time, but not only because of its weird look, but also it's a very addicting pachinko-style gameplay. This isn't an action roguelike per se, but I want to show this because when I did my revisit for this video, I kinda got hooked a little bit on getting my win. Personally, I find this a nice one-and-done roguelike. I don't think I could play this for 6 hours straight, but I will definitely play it until I get a busted winning build. Then after that, I can stop playing for a month and come back fully refreshed and ready to enjoy it again. April had some highly anticipated releases for me. I loved playing Haste, but to be fair, as a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, any game like this would have been great for me. The roguelike part is that the levels are procedurally generated, and you're graded based on your performance getting to the end. The grade gives you money that you'll spend on upgrades in each run. You'll get things like speed boost after dodging, or the ability to get easier perfect landings. All of those are essential parts of the gameplay. You're running across maps trying to do perfect landings to maintain your momentum, completing each stage until you reach the boss at the end. At some point, they added co-op and a bunch of other quality of life features. However, I don't really stream the game very much because I don't think it makes for a very good watch, but I do genuinely enjoy playing it, even if it's offline. But a game that's actually great to watch for viewers is Vaders, and I actually really enjoy playing it, so it's a win-win overall. Technically, this is a deck builder, but because of its positional nature, I feel like these games are better thought of as a time-freezing action roguelike. Yes, the goal is to build a deck with really good cards in it, but the game itself is fighting against multiple aliens that are trying to touch down on the Earth. Your character moves on the grid and attacks by spending cards. So how this plays out is just so clean to me. I often even forget it's a deck builder in the first place. This game also has some very clever solutions to the super overdone attacks and defends that all the deck builders took from Slay the Spire. In Vaders, you're typically on the attack almost the entire time. You're looking to stack a chain combo and get graded at the end with style points. All of that leads to some very fun stuff, very original stuff that I haven't seen in other deck builders. We're now in May, and oh boy, did Elden Ring Nightreign take over. There isn't a lot for me to say about Nightreign that you don't already know. A lot of people were concerned about this game on release, thinking it might be a janky knockoff, but instead we got a seriously replayable boss rush simulator. If you've ever watched pro players play Nightreign, you can see how the routing, the weapon selection, and the combat is super methodical. Noobs like me struggle because it sometimes looks like you're just playing Elden Ring randomizer. Honestly, I wish I had put more time into learning this game so I could become one of those pros myself, but maybe that's something I can do on a second YouTube channel or something. Overall, I think if you're willing to put in hours into learning the game's mechanics, learning the routing, and then practicing beating each of these bosses, I think you'll actually find Nightreign to be a seriously good game. However, I would like to show you all some more, hidden gems out there. May also brought us Deck of Hunts. Not every game in this list is gonna be like a giga contender or even a super flop like we had in January, but some are special to me. Again, we're back in deck builder land, but the twist here is that you play as a haunted house, trying to eat people that came to visit before they discover the room where your heart is hidden. As far as I know, this type of game does not exist. It's almost a reverse boss deck builder where you are the boss fighting against adventurers who come to kill you. The fun part of this is seeing how much you can torture the humans to maximize your scores, and then the score is used to buy better rooms and cards. The issue I currently have with the game is I think the runtime is very long. Essentially, you build and defend each night, and there are 28 nights total before the end of the run. For context, if humans see a dead body, they'll run away, which potentially makes the game harder, so you can't simply just kill them all at the front door. You have to whittle their defenses down. All of that takes time, and since I usually live stream this stuff, I struggle to finish a run in one session. We're now in June, and let's bring it back to another highly anticipated title, Wizard of Legend 2. This game is currently in mixed on Steam at a 56% positive score, so that is dangerously low. In the spirit of full disclosure, my first videos for this game for the initial early access release, well back in 2024, were sponsored videos. At the time, I had high hopes for the development of this game, and I gave a lot of feedback, or so I thought. Fast forward to today, the footage I'm currently showing is my first time beating the game since it released in 1.0. Honestly, I did have fun getting this win, but in the back of my mind, I know that this is basically it for the game. After this win, I will have seen 95% of what there is to do. From a dev standpoint, the hope is that you, the player, will simply play the game again and again just by choosing different spells. In my opinion, that is not good replayability. I'm gonna see the same bosses, I'm gonna get the same reward structure, and there's not gonna be anything in particular that sets this build off except for the element I'm using. So while this game might be fun for a little while, I just can't see myself replaying it over and over. Here we are in July, and I gotta show you a game that I could actually replay, like literally right now as I read from this script, and that game is Hellclock. Like I said in the beginning, I know there are games that you missed, and I am for sure that Hellclock is one of them. My only worry is that I don't know if you'll actually like it, but I love it. The game is made to be a Diablo or a Path of Exile style roguelike. That is to say that you make a busted build and you try to progress through the game's campaign using whatever shows up. The gear that you find is permanent, but it isn't always the answer to your lack of damage or lack of survivability. Because of that, you'll be selling stuff, you'll be crafting, you'll be buying from NPCs, all until you find the golden bullet build to let you win. After the win, you get this Ascension mode where winning will wipe the entire world, pump the difficulty up, and then test your build making to do it all over again. If you don't like that concept, you can actually keep your gear and do the Abyss mode instead, which is basically a new game plus, but personally, I like that Ascension roguelike climbing a little bit better. The game is still getting updates, but I think the biggest hurdle they have is that there's not much to level variety, and the bosses are the same each time that you play through the game. If they could figure that part out, I could see myself being a pretty big Hellclock supporter. July also has another hear me out moment, and that game is called Striving for Light. The visuals of this game are not Hades 2. I get it. I don't play this game for its looks. Hell, I barely even play it for the gameplay. What really hooked me for this game to add it to this list was their infinite skill tree. Again, we have another fake Diablo style, exile style game, but this time you'll be crafting this infinitely scaling skill tree until you hit some of the really fun and busted builds that show up as individual nodes. In my revisit, I start off with a really boring projectile build. I mean, this did nothing at all. I'm pretty sure it was putting my viewers to sleep until I finally hit fun stuff like multi-shot, projectile speed, projectiles return to me, projectile spawn meteor on hit, and a bunch of other stuff. And even still, this build is pretty mid compared to things that I've done in offline gameplay. As you play through, you unlock more content, the areas that you do get more difficult, and the roguelike part of it, the permadeath, I guess, is that you have almost like a global health bar, and if you lose too many times, you essentially lose your entire character. So it's got really fun stakes, really fun build creation, and if it looks like something that you're interested in, we have the links to all of the games in the description of this video. We're now in August with a couple of games that maybe you haven't heard of, maybe you have. First one being Mortal Sin. If you want something a little more action-oriented but still a bit weird-looking, this game might be for you. My first 30 minutes of trying to figure out how this game works almost made me uninstall. However, two things roped me back in, and that was the training dummy and this combo loop setting. While this game might look like a fake Doom clone with melee attacks, how it actually works is that each button you press, whether it be attack, special, even dodge, and kick, it's all part of a combo string. And the string dictates what kind of ability you fire off at the end. You'll then equip gear that augments the combo string with additional effects. But even then, if you don't like what your character is doing, there's actually multiple different characters that all use different weapon types. So the pirate and the monk is what showed me how fun the game could be. I don't have a win yet because the game has like a really big progression system, but every time I do revisit this, now that I know how the game is supposed to work, it's actually fun. Another game that worried me for being a bit too generic was Deadzone Rogue. This one released in August. It took a few runs to start digging into the cool stuff for this game because it started off with basically a blank slate. It opens up with your standard FPS roguelike with a pick 3 for perks, burn on hit, chain lightning, reload speed, all the basic stuff that you could imagine. However, it starts getting fun when the game starts showing you the harder enemies and the new relics they give you to combat this stuff. I think this starts to happen after stage 1, so you could imagine that's the tutorial, and then stage 2 is when the cool stuff happens. Now, my chain lightning gun will activate the element of my grenade, and maybe fire a missile that copies the grenade's effects. Then there's probably a ton of other interactions I have going at the same time. I don't even have that many hours to prove how deep the game gets, but I've seen some pretty cool stuff in the amount of time that I've played. As of putting this video together, they released an Act 4 biome as a free expansion, and I'd say that's pretty cool considering the 1.0 release seemed fine as is. Alright, it's now September. Now we're at the point where Hades 2 is gonna release, but I promise you there's other stuff to play besides Hades 2. Not that it's a bad game, but I don't want it to get all of the spotlight. So I'm gonna instead tell you about Shape of Dreams. This was honestly one of my most anticipated games of the year, and I don't just mean roguelikes of the year, I mean overall anticipated game. I dumped a ton of hours into this game's demo. Before that was a prologue, and all of that progress was going to carry over into the main 1.0 release. However, on release, the game dropped into mixed, and that's thanks to the systems that the devs added almost at the last minute, which negates all of that hours of progress on the demo. But currently, the game is back up to a 94% positive score and features some of the best actual gameplay for an action roguelike that I've seen in a long time. Basically, there's multiple characters, they're all super unique, builds can feel very powerful, but the game is still incredibly challenging at the same time. I was gonna initially put out a lot of content for Shape of Dreams, but that 1.0 release had me losing almost every single run, so I didn't feel comfortable making any guides. But now that I have wins on just about every character, I could see myself putting together a 5 things I wish I knew. If that's something that you'd like to see, let me know in the comments and I'll consider it. Next up in September, I got one single Vampire Survivors clone for you, and that is Jotunnslayer, Hordes of Hell. I know it's Survivors, don't skip yet. I was actually very surprised at how much fun I had in the game, and it honestly looks like a high quality game, at least more so than the other Survivors clones out there. Aside from basic Survivors gameplay, there's objectives on the map so you can path towards those while doing that standard build crafting. It's got your boring stuff like your attack speed, size up, pickup range, you know the deal. If you're not in the mood for a Survivors clone, I probably can't change your mind on it. But if you want to figure out, is it slop or is it not, I would say Jotunnslayer is at least a real game. And for replayability, there's multiple characters, multiple difficulties. Each character has a passive tree that you can boost their stats or unlock new abilities, so I do think there is more game here than some of the other survivors slop out there. We're now in October, and I gotta say, people's Game of the Years are gonna start releasing at this point, if it isn't already Hades 2 and Megabonk. Absolum released in October. If you weren't playing Hades 2 or Megabonk, I sincerely hope you were playing Absolum instead. Of all the action roguelikes that released this year, Absolum has to be the second most cooked after Hades 2. On first glance, it looks like just a standard beat 'em up where you can just spam punch until you beat the game. But A, you will lose if you do that. B, there are multiple alternate routes to reach the final boss, and each route has often their own bosses and mini-bosses. You'll be seeing new things every single run for at least the first 20 hours. And number C, some of the action sequences are just straight up fire. Honestly, I'm kicking myself for putting so much time into Hades 2 on release. I wish I had done Absolum instead. I just didn't know how interesting the game could get once you allow yourself to really start pushing the gameplay systems. After that, I'm gonna give you a game that's not really a roguelike, but I put a lot of hours into this game, and that is called Fellowship. And a lot of those hours have been with the Wholesomeverse squad. The pitch for Fellowship is, what if you took the classes and dungeons of an MMO and make that the entire game? That is to say, no story missions, no grinding for dailies or weeklies, just maintain a character to go up scaling dungeon difficulties. That idea by itself is pretty interesting to me, but then you find out that each tank, healer, and DPS has multiple builds options because they have traits, they have a weapon skill tree, and then attributes that you can pump up for each one. Then to make things more interesting, the dungeons themselves get modifiers. So as you go up in difficulty, they become fresh even though you've done them in the past as a newbie. The modifiers themselves aren't randomized, so that idea of like a roguelike element didn't actually happen for this game. But since the game is currently early access, and the content itself is supposed to be seasonal, so they'll reset over time, I'm excited to see where this game's gonna end up. November's gonna have the last early access game I wanna show you, and that is Moonlighter 2. Once again, another giga-anticipated title. It's the sequel of the original of a game that I've never played. Moonlighter has always been about going into a dungeon, grabbing loot, and bringing it back to your shop to sell to NPCs. In Moonlighter 2, the dungeons are a little bit more roguelite-y. It's got your classic pick 3, things like cold damage, burn, and to be fair, some interesting choices as well. The loot itself, above common rarity, has effects that usually interact with other loot. And these are actually fun to manipulate. You might get a claw that will burn a log, which in turn adds value to a vase. You bring that stuff back to sell, and then use that money for all the roguelite's progression that you're familiar with. However, selling is also a mini-game. This gives you even more pick 3s on each day of selling, and that will help you manipulate prices or how much NPCs will tip you for. If you let yourself get immersed in the game, all of the selling part can be pretty fun too. My review of the game is essentially the first act. If you imagine that the game goes through different acts, Act 1 is the most boring part of the entire game. The combat itself also starts off as being super generic, and loot rarity starts off as like uncommon in Act 1. But like your friend who always tried to suggest you mid-anime that gets better in the later seasons, Act 3 of Moonlighter makes the game extremely fun. My hope is that as development continues, they'll add more quality of life, some bug fixes, and then amp up that early game to show you how fun it could be later. November also has a hidden gem for you, or at least I think this might be a hidden gem. I can't say because I don't have enough hours in it yet, but Eclipse Breaker, just like Deck of Haunts, is a game that really I've never seen before. That is how do you turn a JRPG into a roguelite? And no, it isn't like literally a JRPG, it's more like a parody of one. The combat is a twisted version of turn-based, but real-time and real full-range movement. There's dodging, there's parries, but then the attacks are fired out in a sequence because it's based on turn order. There's some really cool systems in here that I haven't really gotten into. The only part of the roguelite elements I've seen so far is adding elements to each of your attacks. I can't really say how deep that goes, but the team is pretty confident in how it plays. If you'd like to see me play this, or if you've actually played this game already yourself, let me know in the comments. We're finally in December, and to be fair, December didn't have a lot of games for me to try out. The first one that I actually was looking forward to was Let It Die Inferno. This calls itself a roguelike, or at least the tags on Steam calls it a roguelike. What that means to you and me is that your character is lost when it dies, but you earn points and XP that give you temporary and permanent power, so that makes it more of a roguelite. However, what this game actually is a Souls-like extraction game with some light PvP. Well, PvP at least while players are actually online. Ignoring that aspect, if you ever played the first Let It Die, you'll be doing essentially the same thing here, trying to push into harder regions to get loot. In the original, there was no extraction unless you reach the boss. Here, you extract from the raid like all those popular extraction games out right now, unless you want to reach the final ranks of the game. To do that, you'll need to push deeper into the dungeon and not extract right away. This game actually has a lot of character to it. I just don't know if I personally enjoy playing it. Like, I want to experience the game. I want to see everything that the devs worked on, and I want to experience its story. But to actually fight enemies and collect loot, it feels painful. Like, almost as if it was done on purpose. I find the game to be a bit clunky, a little unintuitive, and some of the gear actually sucks. But I do dig the aesthetic, so I haven't uninstalled quite yet. I do want to see what happens as I play through it more. Continuing through December, I struggled to play anything except Path of Exile 2 and Teamfight Tactics. However, I did get suggested Dunjungle, which is a game that I purposely skipped throughout their demos and early access. I can say that the one session I just recorded on my brand new Just Veedotme channel was actually pretty fun. For that alone, round of applause to the dev team. I don't know who they worked with for this release, but I could say it was pretty good. The combat itself isn't simply a Dead Cells clone, and it might even be too simplistic, but I get it. You're a chimpanzee, you swing a weapon, you throw knives, sometimes you can cast spells, and it doesn't need to have full combo strings. It's not like we're playing Devil May Cry. What I do like is that besides the weapons, you collect relics with effects, and we would have never seen this kind of stuff in Dead Cells. I actually thought I was gonna win my first run of the game, but then I botched a few too many fights and got sent back to base. Fortunately, there were a ton of blueprints waiting for me to unlock, and some roguelite progression to make myself stronger. Really, seeing how many blueprints I had to unlock made me want to play the game again. If I end up playing it again, it will be on the Just Veedotme channel. We'll see how they like the game over there. And that's it. My goal for this video was to prove to you that 2025 was more than just Hades 2 and Megabonk. And I didn't even mention things like blueprints or friend slop roguelikes like Peak and Repo. In fact, you might even have a game that I didn't include here that you wanted to see. Leave a like on this video and comment on the roguelikes and roguelites that you enjoyed to play this year besides the two I've been mentioning. That's not me being a hater. I played those games too. I love them. I just want to hear about more stuff. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Alright, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'd like to get you all the best content that I can. If you want to take a moment, Like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, ring the bell notifications so you can get those. You could also consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member. All of those are links which are in the description. Just scroll down and you'll see them. Either way, thanks for joining in, and I'll catch you on the next video.